Hi, welcome. This is Dr. John DeMartini. This is one of the most amazing and inspiring shows that you can listen into. If you want to be on the edge of your seats, if you want to open up your heart, if you want to expand your mind, and you want to meet incredible people, stay tuned because you're just about to experience a transformative radio show that will change your life. And you're listening to the Dr. Pat Show that's coming up right next.
Welcome to the Dr. Pat Show. Talk radio to thrive by. Powerful, inspiring, and coming to you live, bringing you stories of people like you and me, busting through and living life full out. Get ready to dare to wonder what your life would be like if you knew you could not fail.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. What a great show we've got planned for all of you. Shout out to the producers before we get going. Thank you to our Transformation Talk Radio team. Olivia, Benny, thank you for showing up and being who you are today. This is a great show, and it's a conversation with Claudia-Sam that I first of all, you can listen to Claudia-Sam's show, and we'll tell you about that in a minute. But there is something really interesting that I'm just much more aware of now than I have been in a lot of years. And it is this idea of the dance between the ego and the soul. And the reason I say that is because, wow, like a lot of years ago, I was so fascinated when people would talk about the ego because, first of all, I had no idea what they meant. So I read and I read and I read. Then somebody mentioned the soul, and I read and I read and I read. And I found people like Carl Jung and others. But you see, what if it's not one or the other, or pick or choose? You know, it's not like, do you want string beans or carrots, right? It's like you could have string beans and carrots. So what if Claudia-Sam today were to introduce you into the notion of the dance? I love that. There's so many shows on TV now about dancing. But what about the dance? The dance between ego and soul. And what you should know about Claudia-Sam is, first of all, she is right there next to you. If you are a woman who have lost your sense of purpose and you have not learned how to put yourself first, or you don't even understand what that even means, you want to call her. By the end of today's show, you're going to need to really reach out to her. Because this is something not only that she does, but Claudia-Sam Soul Coaching is what she has created. It is a platform for her to set up, and she's like me. Everything we learned in our corporate jobs, we like brought forward. And all of those great years in corporate world has helped us to understand what it is we can be in the world outside of the corporation. And so when you think about, here she is, originally from Montreal, left the corporate career, now coming over here and saying, look, I'm following my intuition, and I am going to create something to help people, women especially, in a way perhaps that wasn't available to me. That's why today we are having a conversation about the dance between ego and soul. Claudia-Sam, great to have you.
Oh, thank you so much, Pat. Yes, I'm so glad to be here.
Yeah, look, I mean, honestly, if you think about this in the way I talked about it, we have grown up in the field of psychology. Let me comment about that, where we couldn't really have a conversation about the dance. It was ego. I've read more books on ego than I could even imagine, but there was always something missing. And so you're bringing something really interesting forward for us to look at. You're bringing, what we live in the world of duality. I want to ask you about this. What is it that we have missed in the conversation of ego and soul?
Thank you so much for that question. What comes to me is, pardon me, that we get in our own way wherever we want to go. Often, let's say we want to be happy now. We want to live a life in a more calm and peaceful and easy way with success and happiness and harmony. But then what gets in the way is, yes, we can say we get in our own way, but the actual thing or part of us that gets in our own way, in my experience, is the ego mind. It's the part of us that worries, the part of us that wants things to go a specific way. It's that part of us that thinks it needs to be right. It's that part of us that wants to convince, that wants to prove. It's that part of us that doesn't want to die. It's that part of us that wants to win. And that energy forgets who we really are at a soul level. And so if we let the ego run the show, we not only live a life out of alignment with our soul purpose, but we let the ego be in the driver's seat. We let worry lead our decisions. We let self-doubt prevent us from taking action that would support our higher self. So yeah, I think it's this part of us that takes too much space. We love the ego. I mean, come on, the ego allows us to be on this show. It allows us to make plans. It allows us to do so many beautiful things. And there gets to be a dance.
Yeah. And this is really what I meant by really stepping up and asking you about the question, because, sometimes we think about things and we say, is it string beans or carrots, right? But then somebody came up with the vegetable medley. And,
Yes.
and somewhere along the way, we were like, wow, like that is a really cool thing. But this dance between the ego and soul, I mean, when you look at it, it is so timeless. The conversation about it is timeless. Yet, understanding it and connecting the dots between doing, not doing, masculine energy, feminine energy, this is really the lesson for our future, isn't it? Can you talk about what the dots are and what you've learned about connecting them?
Thank you. So as a woman, I am a cyclical being. We are all cyclical beings. As a woman, we are cyclical beings in a monthly type of way, like the moon. And I used to, like you, when I worked in corporate, only have one gear, or only have was it a week cycle? It probably was a 24-hour cycle, pretty much like the capital M masculine energy of the cycle being on a 24 hours instead of on a 28-day, for example, or approximately. And what happens is that what happened when I was in this role of being in a corporate job, the only thing that was important to me was doing tasks, doing actions, taking actions, proving myself, showing what I can do. And therefore, I was almost running at full throttle, and until I burned out. And since then, that happened in 2013. Since then, I started to tune in more, hence my tune in method. And I started to recognize my intuition. I started to recognize that there was not only one speed, that there were many speeds at which we could go. And now, since the last, I would say 5 or 6 years, I've stopped taking the contraceptive pill to hone into my body and listen more closely to what my body was telling me. And more recently, since maybe the last year, I've really, really been noticing the monthly cycle of the 4 seasons, not a 24-hour full throttle day or night kind of speed, but rather we live with 4 seasons inside our body. 4 speeds. And that blew my mind when I started to not only look at my body that way, because from that place, I was able to honor my boundaries. I was able to be okay when emotions were closer to the surface at the same level as my doing energy was closer to the surface, because we have some times in our cycle where we feel more apt to take on the world. And there are some times when we just need to sit in a bath and breathe and be calm. And the secret here that connects the dots is being able to be in any of these speeds, in any of these seasons without guilt. that we should be in another season, that we should be in another speed, that instead of being right here, right now in the present moment, that we should do more. No, it's all part of the equation. When the sun shines, it's not telling the night, you owe me. It's the moon. We always go from the dark moon, no moon, you can't see the moon. And then it fills up with light until it becomes the full moon. And that's the fullest expression. That's often when we are in ovulation. That's often when we can rule the world and our confidence is up to the roof. And then slowly the light dims down when we go back to the new moon. And that is more the introversion. When I was able to see that, I noticed that it was the same with the ego voice of doing and the energy of doing and taking action, just like I was fully embodying in my corporate job. And the energy of being right here in the present moment, the energy of the yin, the energy of the feminine energy, the energy of being without guilt, without thinking we should be anywhere else than right now.
Yeah, I got to tell you, it is one of the most critical things for us to be aware of right now. And I think it's one of the most challenging. I must say, it's always been difficult for women. There is no question in my mind. And I go back to my corporate career for a minute. And let me just explain what I mean about difficult. I remember when I worked on the executive team, and I was assistant to the executive vice president of a Fortune 100 company. And that meant a lot of things. That's not like, it was really a position where when I said we need a policy in HR in this company that does A, B, C, D, I'm the one that had to put it in front. And this was during a time, Claudia-Sam, where the idea of women asking to just be was so foreign and insulting to corporate America. Now, we have not changed a whole lot here, but I'm not going to get into that. And what I'm referring to is anything related to family care. Anything related to family care. Because once upon a time, if the family had to have care, there was not even a conversation and the research shows that not too long ago, there was never really even a conversation as to who would leave their job and do the care, right? And, part of this is also now the evolution of who we are as beings, to understand that while we have had to ask for things, the hardest thing is what you just described. Giving ourselves permission. And I love that you used the moon cycles. I loved it. My first introduction to that was in an Indigenous Vision Quest. And I remember this like it was yesterday. One of the members was in their moon cycle. Now, our pop culture calls it, you have your period. But in this particular tribe, it was a ritual. It was honored. I mean, it was the first time in my life that I'd ever seen anything as the way you described in the cycles. And one of the things I'd like you to talk to is the emotional and the mental and the spiritual transformation that occurs in these. Because I will tell you this, my first vision quest, sitting up there all night long, 3 days in a circle, and sitting there in the dark, there's nothing for you to focus on but the sounds and the moon. Where's the moon? But what you just described has so much depth to it. And that's what I'd like you to talk about, because every one of those cycles, I want to ask you, doesn't every one of those cycles have its own yin, yang, masculine, feminine transformation that you have to go through each individual cycle?
Wow.
Right? No?
Yes, this is exactly the dance.
Yes. Thank you.
It happens not in a linear way. It's not, okay, day 1 to day 7, you are in your moon. So you are menstruating, you are bleeding. And then day 8, oh, now you are in your inner spring until day 14. It doesn't work like that. And everyone has a different cycle. Everyone, maybe for some women, the seasons are all mixed up. Who knows? There's no rule. And this is where the ego sometimes wants to make meaning, wants to attach to the rigid linear structure of what we know. Like, okay, I'm going to learn how to be a writer. This is exactly the way, you can go to some coaches and they're going to say, this is exactly the way that you get to be a writer. This is exactly the way that you get to publish your book. What about your intuition? What about your cycle? What about the ups and downs of life that you experience? They will make your book so different and unique. Therefore, the road to being a writer is totally different because it's yours. So when it comes to being in a dance between polarities in this discussion between ego and soul, we are talking about in the different inner seasons. And by the way, this concept comes from the founders of the Red School. The Red School wrote a book called Wild Power, and it has completely changed my life. And there are, for everyone who's curious about having a menstruation mentor, you can check out my menstruation mentor, Megan Noreen, megannoreen.com.
Thank you for that.
This is a place where you get to also tune into what that looks for you. So I wanted to give the reference here. In the inner seasons, because they're not linear, they get to be unique they get to be unique of what for you. So my personal experience of emotions, of mind, of the inner discourse is that because I come from where I come from of, going to school, finding a job, having, the step-by-step of everything that you think you need to do to be happy and be a good person in this world. I did it. Great. Yeah, I'm not regretting that. And that is a structure that my ego mind has felt comfort and safety within. So whenever there's a new concept of being, of allowing, of slowing down, of giving ourselves permission, the ego is like jumping up and down in my mind and being like, wait a minute, where's the structure? So I want to open up here the opportunity for you as you listen to remember that ego saying that, wanting to anchor to a structure is just part of what it knows. It's just part of your old self. And you get to, like if you were seeing a child tug on your dress or tug on your shirt and wanting your attention, you get to look at it. I look at ego and I talk to ego all the time. And I say, hey, wait a minute. This is the old structure. And right now we're going with the flow. Right now, if it's okay, I see you, I hear you, I'm holding you.
Yeah.
And I love you. Oh, and
this is really the reason we're having this conversation is I want to really get into the dance because I love the metaphor. Okay. So I'm going to go a little wild with you.
Go ahead.
I'm going to go a little wild with you on this. Look, for most of my life, I didn't have your language. And for those of you just tuning in, the dance between ego and soul, very special guest, host of a fantastic show, Claudia-Sam. I'm going to give you lots of information because it's the body of work that she's been called to do. It's really to help all of us not just understand this, but how to be in a multidimensional way of living. And that is where we are right now. And, one of the things I want to ask you, there have been some points in my life where the dance between the ego and soul was like heavy metal music. Just saying. And you ever try to dance to heavy metal music? Okay. It is the most funnest thing to dance to. Do you know why? It has no form. There's nobody watching to see if you got the right hip hop moves, right? Is she like doing hip hop from 20 years ago? No, right? It is that music. Spiritual dance is the same. And yet, when I was put in both arenas, right, I could always go crazy to heavy metal stuff and anything rock, right? I didn't care what anybody looked at. But the minute I went into spiritual realm and people were spiritual dancing, I could do it. I was like feeling ashamed. I was feeling embarrassed. And this is the dance between the ego and soul. Because see, my ego was like, this is like a flowy dance. Even it's the same idea, right? Heavy metal, free form, jump up and down, roll on your back. It doesn't matter. The spiritual movement was the same. And I waited for somebody to tell me how to do it. And the people were like, this was my first music festival, by the way. Like, I don't even know when. And the people were like, just do it. And you see, the ego has its place. And I would love for you to talk to this. The ego has its place. I just don't know why it wants to battle with the soul instead of go with the flow of the soul.
Oh my gosh, yes.
What is up with that?
Sometimes I ask myself the same question. I'm like, oh, why?
Right?
The soul is so easy and flowy and wants my higher self to be happy and loving. So what the hell are you doing to me? The ego is like this muscle that has been flexed for the longest period of time. I believe that we are born a soul and we are pure love. And then we start to be in society and to be educated, and we take on the safety and protection mechanism of our parents, and we start to receive rules and regulations and what's right and what's wrong and what you should do and what you shouldn't do. Or, you know, we start to create almost like an armor around the soul. And since this armor becomes so rigid, because if we don't do what the armor says, then we're not a good person and we're judged and we are defeated and we feel not successful and we feel not loved. So with time, the ego creates an armor around the soul. And I'm going to say what I feel the ego is good for. I'm going to add right now that personally, I have been working on that one belief that is, or that has created the armor. And that belief is, to be safe, I need to know, I need to be prepared, and I need to be organized. To be safe, I need to know, I need to be prepared, and I need to organize. Yeah. So whenever that the soul is like, the soul is safe, the soul doesn't need to plan, the soul trusts. So because my belief still is, but very less, it's way lighter now, but because that belief was so present, it was an automatic reaction, action, presence, operation into the world to make sure that I was organized and prepared and that to be safe, that I knew. So I would learn and learn and learn. I would go get all these certificates. I would fill my coaching toolbox with all these tools because that's what I would stay safe with. So in a way, the ego got me to where I am because, and thanks to that belief, it allowed me to create my coaching toolbox. It allowed me to get to where I am. It allowed me to feel good enough to create this soul connection coaching business because it felt safe. And now that the soul gets to have this dance of, the soul comes in more often through calm, through meditation, grounded energy. The soul will come through with intuition. And so the more the soul comes through in my life daily, this happens like multiple times throughout the day where there's a dance. It's like, the swing one way to the other.
Exactly.
And the ego actually just gets to be soothed and like I'm brushing the ego's hair, because it's not about saying, okay, ego, no, all of a sudden to be safe, you don't need to know, you don't need to prepare, you don't need to organize. That was bad. I'm kicking you out of the way. No, because it's there. I don't want to ignore it because it's going to keep pounding on my door and it's going to keep putting roadblocks on my track. So instead, I welcome the ego in a balance, and I try my best to say, thank you, ego. Thank you, ego, for helping me put to work what my intuition brought for me. right now in my life, I'm trying, and I think I'm succeeding in that more and more, where the soul will lead in a way that I will have a download of an idea. For example, the dance between ego and soul started as this idea for me to go live daily on my personal Facebook page.
Nice.
And it eventually became a 90-day thing. We're on day 55 today, actually. So if you're curious, go check out my personal Facebook page. And my name is long, so hear me out. Claudia-Sam Cataford Sauvé. You can find out about me on the transformationtalkradio.com website with my show, The Be Happy Now Show. And so now I'm able to put forth the dance between ego and soul on my personal Facebook page, all the while using my intuition.
This is it. Look, I want to talk to you about this when we come back from break. And also, you got to listen to Claudia-Sam's show. But one of the things that I struggled with, and I think that's why ultimately when I had the opportunity after getting fired from my job, because I think it was my soul that showed up. I don't think it was my ego that made me become like a super rebel right there at the end. But I went back to school, and thank goodness I got into a program at Columbia where they did not even go into Freud's version of the ego. They were all about group and group dynamics. One of the hardest programs I've ever taken. It was emotionally grueling. It was really a tough program there. But at some point, I had to learn about it. And I remember being into... I remember really... Look, when you're an adult and your professor makes you stay after class, that is so like, what did you say, right? But I remember going through this and watching this very long lecture, and oh my God, the id and the ego and the blah, 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 and the development of it. And when is the ego born? Now, of course, the philosophy, since Freud, there have been other theories that have changed his perception and perspective. But it's good. They call it now the birth of the ego. But here's what I asked. What are we operating from before year 3? Like they say 3, like it takes 3 years when you're born. So I'm like, I'm really interested in the 3 years. Tell me about the 3 years, right? I mean, this is how I had to stay after class. Like I'm an adult, I'm in my 40s, and like you got to stay after class for this question. Because 3 hours, I listened to it. I heard everything. But every conversation about ego, I'm thinking, okay, it starts to develop here, and then and all I could see is this happy little 1-2-year-old baby, and I wanted to know what the heck is going on with you, boy, girl. They don't know masculine, feminine, right? Mm-hmm. They're happy in their little diaper, walking around, smiling, dancing, right? I wanted to know that. Now, there are some questions you don't ask in certain religions. And apparently there are some questions in psychology that will put you in a certain trajectory. When we come back, Claudia-Sam is going to talk to us about this idea that we call ego that sends us into a trajectory of discipline and doing. Not discipline and doing like up into the age where we're happy and we're jumping around and we're like pulling on stuff on our parents' tables and we're rolling around the floor. Not that. Because see, we're going with the flow over there, right? You ever watch a child? You ever watch a baby? It's like watching a puppy. They're like, oh, I think I'm going to try to get out of this crib. They don't have a rule book that says I'm going to do it. But what happens when the bee and the bee show up? And this is not bed and breakfast. It's busy to being. We're going to introduce you to the awareness wheel. We're going to talk about what Claudia-Sam is doing. But this is what you should know. It doesn't matter how you shape your ego. And I got to tell you, Viktor Frankl saved my life. It doesn't matter how you shape your ego or what your life is before. What Claudia-Sam is going to tell you when we come back, you at a choice point now. You can be the master of your being universe. But you may need help, and she's the one. Let's take a short break, Benny. Everybody, we'll be right back with Claudia-Sam. I got to do a whole show on what Claudia-Sam and I were just talking about. my stepmom was, she was so genius. She's up there now looking down, and she's got an answer for everything we're talking about. She's looking down. My mom is looking down and say, hey, I want to tell you about busy. I want to just tell you about this, but don't ever let me not go to my bingo game. Claudia-Sam is joining me here. Claudia-Sam, look, before we go ahead, I need folks to know all of the different ways to connect with you. But can you also say more about the Facebook group, please? Because that is dynamite.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Well, so my Facebook group is called You Have It In You. You can find it anywhere. On Facebook, just go, You Have It In You. If you go to my personal Facebook page for another 60 days or 30 days, oh gosh, I can't count. I'm playing.
Don't ask me.
I'm playing with the dance between ego and soul, and you can play along actually. So if you find me on Facebook, Claudia-Sam Cataford Sauvé, you can also sign up for free to Dancing with Ego and Soul at claudiasamsoulcoaching.com/ego versus soul. So ego vs soul, and you can sign up for free. You can also find me on Transformation Talk Radio. I'm hosting the Be Happy Now show every Thursday at 3:30 Pacific. And of course, if you want to know more about my tune-in method, or if you want to just align with your soul and be the version of yourself that is aligned and happy, and you want to find your purpose still by going through the ups and downs of life, then let's just have a chat, a heart to heart. You can go to tuneinmethod.com and click on Say Yes to Yourself so that we can book a chat together. I'd love to meet you.
Yeah, I want to talk for a minute about your show. I want to just say this. I've been doing this 20 years, Benny, right? And Benny has seen me struggle at various points in time. I pulled it out when a guest doesn't show up and you have to talk, right? Like for an hour. Claudia-Sam does one of the best shows where she shows up. I don't even know how she does it. And you literally watch her and you're hanging on every word and you watching her channel just like you're doing now. And you have to wait till the archive comes up because you have to think, what did she just say? She has one of the most fascinating and interesting shows, and I consider her one of my mentors.
Oh my gosh. Well, thank you so much, Pat.
Yeah. I mean, and the team like that does the show and really works with the show. It's fascinating to watch what happens when you're called. And this is why I brought it up. Because you have to be in that place of being to do what I do every day and do what you do every day. If you were to ask me what I just said, I couldn't tell you. But I want you to really address a couple things here. The idea of busy to being. It is so powerful, so simple, and yet so hard. Do you understand? And this idea of an awareness wheel, we need to talk more about that. But embedded in all of this is emotion. I have had more business meetings on my calendar where people have showed up and we had a business thing, like a client thing or something, a show thing. And we spent the hour just talking about a lack of motivation. Because sometimes you got to meet people where they are. Can you talk about the emotional complexity of what happens with these two words, busy to being?
Thank you. I think also to touch on what you just said, when we think we need to meet people where they are, great if we can. And I think we can. When we can meet ourselves where we're at first. Because if we are always out there, for example, one of my clients said, I feel like I'm catching all these balls from everyone and I'm exhausted and it makes me feel so drained. And I said, well, wait a minute, did they all ask you to play with them? Or are they just throwing the balls because they assume that you will catch them and you catch them? Can you instead go say, hey, I'm going to play with this person and that person, and the other balls, well, they didn't ask me to play, so too bad. So the emotional, you see it, right? You see the image.
I totally get it. I mean, because I've been there. I've been there. When you are not the most popular kid growing up, and I was not. My two stepsisters were, but I was not. That was like not me. These two beautiful blonde girls, just gorgeous. My sister Joyce, beautiful on the inside out. My sister Doris really struggled with mental illness most of her life. But when you're sitting there and you're me, this little chubby, right? Clearly looking like you're from a different country, dark. I was really dark as a kid, really pudgy, let's just say. You learn some things, and you learn some things about yourself, but you also learn how the ego will play havoc on the comparison notion, because isn't that what the ego does?
Yes, and that brings us to the emotional complexity and to the armor that the ego has built up over the years over the soul. The emotions for me is definitely part of the awareness wheel that I want to talk to you about. The emotions is, okay, let's play a little quiz right now. Whomever, when you're watching, and you, Pat, let me know. I'm going to tell you 4 different emotions archetype, and you can let me know which one you feel like you were before and which one you are now. Does that sound good?
Okay.
Okay, great. So,
okay, wait, let me get present. Let me just stop running the show. Let me just, okay.
Focused. Great. I want you to imagine yourself as an emotional being, as you are, and feel into your body, as I mentioned, these 4 different emotions archetype, and tune in to which one resonate the most with you. So imagine a rock, the rock that is so solid that will only move from its location if there's a huge wave, depending on its size. The rock is the type of being who does not let emotions out and doesn't let themselves be affected by much. And well, that creates a rock. The second emotions archetype is the wave, the one that will come and drown you and then will be super calm, the one that will be at peaks and then at really, really lows. The other emotions archetype is the volcano. When you bubble it up, you feel the heat. And then in places where you don't feel safe, you explode. And then, well, there it is. It's out. You feel good, but it's out and it makes you feel uncomfortable. The fourth emotions archetype is the one that I seek to be more and more in my life. It's the river, the one that just gets nourished by the rain and it goes to the ocean, and there's always this cycle, and it flows and it moves so fluidly over the rocks and around the volcano, and it's just fluid. Which emotions archetype are you?
I have to tell you, I strive for the river too, but I know I'm the wave. I know that's me. And yet I know so much about that for myself. And let me explain why real quick. I don't want to take up the whole time. I come from a family of alcoholics and addicts. My mom committed suicide, right? She was an addict and an alcoholic. Prescription drugs, that's what they gave women to shut up. And I grew up in that environment, where this was the way you grew up, right? And if you weren't selling drugs at a young age or weren't doing something like that, then you just didn't fit in on the streets or in the projects. By the time I was 17, I was homeless. And so, I think about that, and I think about how restrained I was with my emotions, because honestly, you know this and I know this, people that have had, I'd say, challenging experiences, they don't learn this. But I'll tell you the good news for me. I went to Catholic boarding school at an ungodly age. My dad paid the school off to get me in. You don't send a 6-year-old to Catholic boarding school, but I did, because my mom was sick. And she actually died when I was in there. But I learned something in there, despite being in trouble all the time and being beat every night, because my spirit was untainted. And I learned to love this love energy of, I'm going to say, God and Jesus. It's going to be different. And then I grew up to hate, and then I grew to hate it. And then I had to get back to understanding that I really hated myself. But I took the best from that. And what I realized as time went on, that my emotional body could embellish that idea of the river. But it has been a lifelong journey for me to allow myself to feel anything without numbing. So let's just be clear. When you numb yourself, I don't know, maybe you're dancing on the table, but you are not, you're not feeling. So I strive to be the river. But a lot of times I'm hit with emotion like the wave.
And the
And I have
awareness
less highs and less lows.
And the thing is, you're aware and you get to work from that place.
It's taken me a lifetime.
And isn't that what we're here for? To build resiliency, to build connection with who we really are. And part of who we are is an emotional being. And what I want to bring or add today is that emotions are your friend. Emotions are there to open up a door to what gets to be alive within you. Emotions are there to help guide your way. And if we remain the rock, or if we are the volcano, or even if we let the waves be okay, then we say no to fluidity. We say no to soul. We say no to living life in harmony. Is it really easier? I heard a discussion between Marianne Williamson and Oprah. And Oprah was saying, how can I pray for someone who's hurt me? And Marianne Williamson said, oh, because Oprah was saying, it's so hard to pray for someone who's hurt me. And Marianne Williamson said, so it's easier to sit in anger and in frustration and in judgment? No. It gets to be easy when we allow the emotions to be an energy in motion and not an energy that gets stuck in the body and that either stays there, that either bubbles up and explodes, or that will overpower you and throw you off guard. So when we are playing from being busy and we don't want to be in the go, go, go or in the do mode anymore, and we want to access that part of us that is now at the top of the to-do list, that part of us who is being in alignment with our soul, I like to tell my clients that they get to enter the awareness wheel. And the awareness wheel is 3 parts. The first part is being aware of how your body is responding. So whether you are noticing that the ego is worried, is afraid, is doubting, wherever the ego is taking you, maybe you feel like, oh, there's this armor that's being created because I'm protecting myself. Okay. Are you feeling a headache? Are you feeling like nausea? Are you feeling lower back pain? What's the body telling you about the experience, whatever experience that you are living? What's the body saying? Being aware of that. And then being aware, secondly, of what's the mind and what's happening in the mind. What are the thoughts that are being, what's the discourse? And that's where you get to really notice the ego. That's where we really get to be, we get to shine a light on the self-doubt, on the worry, on the self-criticism, on the judgment. And then, so we get to be with that. And then thirdly, we get to understand, how do we feel? What's the emotion there? And with the awareness wheel, you can enter anywhere. You could be triggered by someone putting pressure on you. You could feel like, oh my gosh, this is putting pressure on myself. I need to do this project right now. This is the busy, thinking you need to do it right now. Oh, maybe you feel the ego. Oh my gosh, I need to do it right now mentally. Otherwise, I'm not going to be good enough. Oh, and then to complete the awareness wheel, notice how that lands in your body. Does it make you feel stuck? Does it make you feel like a prisoner of your own body? Do rashes appear? And then how do you feel? Yeah. And can you be in this awareness wheel like a witness to the experience before you take action from an energy of busy? Because by taking an action from the energy of busy, the result will be of an energy of busy and not from an energy of being who you're here to be, not from an energy of soul alignment. Because, oh my gosh, the magic that you can allow in your life when you access that soul, intuitive, heart, yin energy. Oh my gosh, it's expansive. Look out for that kind of creativity.
It's amazing, and this could be applied to anything. I want to back up for a minute. I want to say this because we started out like this, Claudia-Sam, everybody. I always prepare shows the day before. I look at them and then they stay with me. Like when I looked at this, I looked at this before I went to play my sport. And I play a sport and I'm pretty good at it. I've won a couple of state championships and stuff. And, and I like to coach people. I like to help them, especially new people. And I like to help them before they learn habits that is so hard to break. And this one gentleman said to me yesterday, I play table tennis, ping pong. And the one gentleman who I'm working with had a ball. And he asked me a question, why do people bounce the ball on the table? And he's showing me. He's saying, why do they? And this is a man who barely just learned how to hit the ball. But he had a great question. He said, why are they bouncing the ball on the table before they serve? And I said, 9 times out of 10, I'll tell you it's probably nervous energy. And he says, well, why do so many people doing it? I want to do it. I said, it's nervous energy. And then I said, after getting ready for your show, I said, look, when you're playing a sport, that the ball will come back to you anywhere from 60 to 90 miles an hour at any given point in time. Do you want to be bouncing a ball or do you want to be quiet before you serve? Look where your opponent is. Think about the serve you're going to make. And then intuitively serve the ball to win the point. Which do you want to do? Do you want to be bouncing the ball? Because you can't do both. You can sit there and bounce the ball like 500 times on the table, watching the ball, not your opponent. Get ready to serve, and you'll find the place you just served the ball, your opponent's right there and going to kill the ball. Now, how did I get that from prepping for your show? I did, because there's something in what you were talking about and talked about today. This applies to everything. It's how a mom knows right before an incident to reach over and grab a child. Can you talk for a minute now about how absolutely practical and needed this understanding is in a world where we are getting data like faster than we can open our mouths and even send it?
Thank you. This is where, if we look at what's going on in the world right now, we are June 9th today, 2022, and what we've been going through in the last 2 years. If everyone was aware of the dance between ego and soul, if everyone could align their reactions, their actions, their decisions from a place of soul, alignment of capital L love, if everyone could flex their soul connection muscle and be their own inner guides, there would be more understanding, more compassion, more gratitude, more openness, more calmness, less fear, less competition, less division. And just in my life, and I'm a pretty aware, self-coachable and coachable person, I work with coaches and therapists in my life on a regular basis. There are friendships, pardon me, there is one friendship that has dialed its energy down because of I choose to be anchored in my soul. I choose to be anchored in my beingness and be with compassion instead of anger, instead of judgment, instead of fear. And just for this reason of harmony, that is a practical way.
It's my favorite word.
Of bringing it all together, and why it's so important that we are aware of ourselves, because we can't control others, but we can so surely control what we say, what we do. That's where we are at choice.
Yeah. Okay. This message from you today, and I know you do a lot more work than just do a message and a show with me. I know you've put this into action. What's underneath all of this is you and I have seen, this is my language, you and I have seen what gets lost when we continuously choose busy. Now, I will tell you, when I mentioned my stepmom's heart exploded because she was at a point in her life. She battled Hurricane Andrew. She built condominiums for other people. But my mom didn't know how to take enough proper care of herself. And yet at the same time, I also know that the laws of the universe say that this was her time. How can we help people in the last couple minutes? What would your message be to help them, one, understand the dance? If they don't understand the dance, reach out for help, because harmony is the key. I've never understood the word balance. It's not even in my vocabulary. The word harmony, though, allows you to do and be and say in a rhythm, in a beautiful blending that sits for you. How can we help people, Claudia-Sam?
Right now, exhale everything. Close your eyes if you're not driving, and if you can, inhale through the nose. Feel the breath come in, and exhale with a sigh. And feel your heartbeat. The heart that is always working so hard, the heart, the muscle of the heart, you don't have to do anything. It's already working. And it's not asking anything in return. Can you be with the heartbeat right now in gratitude for it's keeping you alive? When we get to tune in to this heart space, we cultivate appreciation for ourselves. We release judgment and guilt, and we allow who we are to be enough. We allow what we did, what we said, how we showed up to be enough. So my message for you is, are you willing to allow who you are right here, right now, to be enough and to make the next decision from that place?
Powerful beyond belief. Claudia-Sam, can we take a moment to let folks know again how they can find out about you? Please let everybody know about the group that you formed. Doesn't matter what day you're on, people can jump in, right?
Totally. Oh, yes, totally. And someone said, but I'm not sure I'm going to be able to make it at the same time every day. And I said, well, this is the dance between ego and soul. There's no same time every day, because we're breaking the mold that there needs to be rigidity. So if you need to have a specific time every day to play with dancing with ego and soul, then you put that in your calendar. But I'm vowing to my intuition and to my soul to show up whenever I feel inspired. And then you make your calendar the way you want it. So if you want to play, go to claudiasamsoulcoaching.com/ego versus soul to register for free. We're going until July 15th, 2022. But of course, if you want to join my free group on Facebook, go to the group is called You Have It In You. And you can read up about me, and you can download my free 3-step audio guide to put yourself first on my website, claudiasamsoulcoaching.com. And I'm just so glad to be here. And I want to say about my Be Happy Now show with Transformation Talk Radio, go to thebehappynowshow.com. You can listen to the past episodes. We're past 30 something episodes.
It's great.
And there's a bunch of goodies on there. So thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you so much for everything, Claudia-Sam, everybody. I'm Dr. Pat. And, you know, today, this really is a dance. What I want to say, really to echo what she said, is, look, when you enter this dance, you enter this guilt-free, shame-free, and know that you show up perfectly. Perfectly. You have every move you need to create the harmony and the life you want. Sometimes there are some of us that need to hire a few coaches or work with people, and that's how we get to be. But if you give Claudia-Sam a ring or call or reach out, you'll get the help you need. Claudia-Sam, thank you for being you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Pat. Thank you for being you.
Yeah, I'm still dancing. Hey, Benny, everybody, let's take a short break. I wonder what dance Benny might be doing right now. Let's take a short break, everybody. We'll be right back.